Ilaria heard their voices. "You must marry him, you hear? You will marry him." The story of Ilaria is that, having died at a young age, she was reborn and found herself in that period of her life when she was 20 years old. She grew up in the slums without receiving an education. Her teacher was the street, and she was abandoned by her own family. The girl, not yet fully realizing what had happened, entered the toilet and went to the mirror. Seeing her reflection, she realized that she was 20 years old again. She was the eldest daughter in her family. Consciousness began to restore the picture of reality. She had a fight with her father, and now her sister asks her father not to be angry. Her father's beloved little daughter, Vanessa, says that her sister just woke up. Perhaps she has some kind of resentment in her heart. Ilaria came out of the toilet. Naturally, her father answered her that there was no question of any education. Well, where should she go? The girl defiantly turned to her father, saying that she had a mother but no father. He simply never existed. Almost immediately after giving birth, her mother died. Her father's mistress came to the hospital almost before giving birth, and her mother began severe bleeding and exhaustion from stress. Her father abandoned her mother, dying in the hospital, by marrying his mistress. 3 months later, she gave birth to her paternal sister Vanessa, her and her father's favorite, and Ilaria was sent to her grandmother, who lived in poverty, collecting garbage. After the heroine of the story turned 20 years old, her father came to her. Of course, Ilaria greeted him with choice dialogue, after which he, in a rage, shouting that no one raised the girl well, decided to make up for lost time, namely, give his rude daughter a good whack. But he did not expect that his daughter intercepted his blow, reminding him that while she lived in the slums, she had to fight more often than his beloved youngest daughter had to hug him. The stepmother tried to intervene in an unctuous voice and remind the girl that this was her father. Let her listen to what he had to say. They tried to convince Ilaria to marry the son of the Carter family. They are very rich, and he is the eldest heir. He will not harm her. In response to these words, Ilaria hit her stepmother on the cheek with all her might, and she sat down on the floor in a mournful voice and said that they wanted what was best for her, adding that if this is such a great opportunity, why doesn't she marry her Vanessa to him, and warned that she has no education, so if she gets angry, she'll hit her so hard that it won't seem like much. The situation was such that having concluded a marriage contract with the Carter family, the groom got into a car accident half a year ago. He is paralyzed and cannot walk. So as not to break the marriage contract with his family and not anger his mother, they turned all the arrows to Ilaria, so that do not part with your beloved Vanessa, and do not pass her off as a disabled person. In a past life, Ilaria refused to marry the disabled man Adam, but chose his brother, who cheated on her. And then she and her grandmother died in a car accident. In her past life, she chose the wrong path. Now she has a chance to change everything, so she doesn't care who Adam is. The most important thing is to protect herself and the one who is dear to her. The girl had a vague idea who her fiancé was. She had never seen him at all. She heard her younger sister, who reprimanded her for hitting her mother, to which the girl sent her to hell. Her father said that she would marry Adam in 2 days, period. Ilaria announced that the mother and daughter are of the same berry field. One is an old woman who builds innocence out of herself. The second is a young mercantile fool. She will get married, but with a condition. She wants a house in the western region, and 1 million in addition. She will not agree to other conditions. The father called her an idiot. He was furious, but his wife convinced him to give his daughter a dowry. It was not that much, and he needed to preserve the reputation of his family. The girl kicked out her relatives after the agreement was concluded. At the door, they encountered her grandmother, who was clearly not happy about their arrival. Ilaria lovingly rushed to hug her grandmother. How wonderful it was that she could hug her like that again. She told her grandmother that her father would buy them a nice new house and give them 1 million, but she immediately asked under what conditions he would do this. The father appeared at the door and declared that she should not ask for a dowry, but should rejoice at such a successful marriage, a young, rich, and handsome husband. What else is needed for happiness? And then the day came when she came to her husband. They were painted without their presence. The girl arrived at her new home. Getting out of the car, Ilaria looked around. Yes, the mansion is really huge. The butler invited her to enter the house. She took off her glasses and looked at the interior of the house. She decided to immediately go and meet her husband. The butler warned that the gentleman had not left the room for several days. She grabbed the door handle and turned it. She was nervous, saying that if Mr. Carter doesn't mind, she will come in. The girl saw a young, handsome, but very sad man sitting in a semi-dark room on a wheelchair. Ilaria said that she was his wife, and they needed to get to know each other better. The man looked at her coldly and told her to get out, but she was not taken aback, and smilingly replied that they were now a family and should get to know each other better. First of all, the girl opened the curtains so that they could clearly see each other and introduced herself as Ilaria, his wife. Still gloomily, the young man said that he did not need a wife. Ilaria, without embarrassment, leaned towards him and said that although he was not present, she took the documents. In legal terms, they are husband and wife. So that's it, dear. He handed her a bank card, saying that if she came for money, then there's enough here for a comfortable life. She hesitantly took the card, explaining that she had recently been interested in investments. She actually wanted to borrow from him. But since he himself gives, then when the time comes, he will divide the profit in half. The husband replied that he didn't care. Just don't talk and don't bother him. He signaled the butler to take him away, and his newly made wife loudly declared that he would not regret investing in her. He didn't say anything, didn't even look at her. The girl once again repeated to her husband that his money would not go to waste. At that moment, Dvorsky stood holding a bat and said that his younger brother got into a fight at school, and the parents of another child burst into the house and demanded an apology. Ilaria thought, there are many children in the Carter family. As far as she remembers, Alex was Adam's support. If we let them leave like this now, then we won't have any problems later. She resolutely took the bat and said that since they were a family now, she would sort everything out. Her husband's blue eyes glanced sideways at her. He thought to himself about the meaning of the word family that he had spoken to her. The girl went down the stairs and saw how the guy with whom Alex had a fight said that his older brother was really crippled. What did he say? The boy's relative demanded an apology because no one in this family cared about him anyway. But instead of apologizing, Alex called the man a bastard. Descending the stairs and twirling the bat, Ilaria, with the air of a street gang leader, declared who gave them permission to cause a commotion in someone else's house. She introduced herself to her newly made relative as Ilaria, declaring that she was now his daughter-in-law. The guy looked at her like a hunted wolf cub, saying that it didn't concern her, then adding that let Dade not think of controlling him by marrying his older brother. He received a bat. Alex and his classmate were horrified by such power. They cowered and looked at it in fear. Adam sat upstairs and wondered what was happening down there. An earthquake or something. A young relative of Alex's classmate told Ilaria in admiration that this was a great way to teach these two a lesson, but also looking at her added that the wife of the Carter family was too disrespectful to his family. The girl, looking at him boldly, noted that the younger generation in these families is too arrogant, so why should she be ashamed of her words? The young man leaned down no less boldly, taking her by the curl, saying that she meant that he entered the house so unceremoniously. But if such a beauty as she declares that it is his fault, then perhaps it is true. Before Ilaria had time to answer, she saw Adam in the carriage with the butler, who ironically said that since the young master was so interested, then why shouldn't he tell his young relative what is right and what is wrong? He was embarrassed and said that he apparently embarrassed the lady. It was time for him, and let them deal with the younger generation themselves. Adam told the butler to get a new bat. His wife needed to let out all her anger. Ilaria thought how funny. He wants justice for her. This man is just a mystery. The man grabbed his younger brother by the collar and said that he had been naughty since childhood. There was no need to punish him severely. Then Ilaria offered to spank him herself if he was so naughty. The young man hesitated, and our heroine said with a laugh, "So what's the problem?" He tried to quickly leave the house. His younger brother pleadingly asked not to leave him. He grabbed the bat and, running after his brother, ordered him to immediately apologize to his mistress. Satisfied, Ilaria watched this picture and noticed that now they would definitely be able to establish contact with each other. When the punishment was over, the girl invited them to go home, and her new family looked at her, wondering if she really grew up on the street. Then, smiling brightly at Adam, she thanked him for his help. She noticed that the outsiders had left, and his younger marriage had not yet been punished. With the words, "Do as you wish," he left. Alex asked if the strangers had left. So why does she want to punish him? Our heroine replied that she should consider her a mother who will teach a lesson. Having sent the first blow to him, she explained what it was because, as a child of the Carter family, he did not win in a fight and was allowed to enter the house. The second is for the way he calls her, and the third is for his unkempt appearance and wild behavior. No one raised him this way, so Alex was in shock. Ilaria explained to him that brute force cannot be used just like that. He quietly asked if she would beat him anymore. She replied that she had taught her lesson. Now they are family and not strangers. Then she ordered him to clean up and get ready for dinner. The guy thought that a family didn't sound so bad. The butler reported to Adam what happened next after he left. The lady beat Mr. Alex, but he was not angry with her. He did not expect the lady to be like this. Adam looked thoughtfully out the window. What happened today made him think about what was happening. Ilaria appeared on the threshold of the room and said that she had given the order to prepare his favorite dishes. When she said that she would help him go down to dinner, the man replied that he was not hungry. She leaned close to his face, adding that the family should have dinner together. This is her habit, and she hopes that he will get used to it. He muttered that he agreed with irritation and thought that she considered him a child. When she and Adam appeared in the dining room, Alex jumped. The older marriage went down to dinner. The guy thought that maybe she had beaten him too, and he was afraid. Meanwhile, Ilaria asked where his younger sister was. The fifth lady always eats alone in her room. The girl ordered not to serve food until another member of the family, the younger Blake, who has not yet returned from school. In this family, there are 6 children who are only half related by blood. There are rumors that this girl had an unhappy childhood. They say she is extremely indifferent and willful. Opening the door to her sister-in-law's room, she saw the girl playing the piano. The girl said in fear that they should not come in. Her eyes looked at the stranger in fear. Ilaria looked at the girl, wondering if those rumors about her were true. Approaching the girl, she introduced herself and told who she was. And her name is Victoria, that's right. And the music she plays isn't Saint Seiyan's Swan. Ilaria gently put her hand on the girl's hand, but she was horrified and hysterical, asking not to touch her. In early childhood, Victoria was beaten half to death, once because she admitted that she would like to play the piano. The man said that she was no longer the lady of the Carter family, so she should stop dreaming. Ilaria saw a fragment of memory from a past life, when Victoria, dirty and beaten, was returned to the Carter family. When asked why, the relatives said that this girl was looked for by an enemy of the family. They looked for her and returned her. No matter how large their family is, the girl's father is dead and her mother has gone crazy. No one cares about her. It's so terrible what a lady she is of the Carter family. She's just a brat. The girl was bullied for trembling when she played the song Swan. Ilaria remembered how Victoria was insulted that she was unworthy to play such a composition. Tears flowed from the eyes of the young relative from the horrors of her childhood. She thought that they would start beating her again. She opened her mouth in surprise when Ilaria sat down next to her and began to play. The girl thought that this was an excerpt from the composition Swan. Ilaria added that she only knows a small chord, but Victoria can teach her to play the entire composition if she doesn't mind. She also praised the girl for her game, although there are echoes of pain in her, but she will try to do everything so that Victoria can overcome it. Smiling at her new relative, she noted that they were now a family, and therefore should help each other. Victoria tried to smile through her tears. Leading the girl by the hand, who was still wiping her tears with her hand, they appeared in the dining room. Everyone in the dining room, including the younger Blake, who had come home from school, froze in surprise. They had not seen their relative for a long time. Blake greeted his daughter-in-law. The girl looked around at those sitting and thought that the whole family was almost assembled. Only 2 were missing. One lived abroad, and the second was missing. Ilaria greeted young Blake warmly and said that he could wash his hands and they would start dinner. Alex pulled his brother to wash his hands so that he wouldn't accidentally contradict his daughter-in-law and get beaten. Adam watched silently, thinking that they were all having lunch together like this. But actually, he should be number one. The next morning, Ilaria had breakfast, thinking that being a daughter-in-law was not so difficult. She thought that after rebirth, everything would be much more difficult, and the children were very cute. Blay ran up the stairs to school, afraid of being late, when he heard Ilaria's voice, which stopped him. Everyone was sitting at the table having breakfast, and the girl stopped the youngest member of the family. She told the boy to drink milk and not rush to the school bus. The driver would take him. He was surprised by such a proposal, to which Ilaria added that if he drinks milk, he will strengthen his strength and grow faster. If he doesn't like this, next time she asked for soy milk, but the boy drank the milk with pleasure. Victoria Ilaria said that the cook would prepare porridge from pork liver to enrich the blood. Alex asked what his daughter-in-law had prepared for him. The girl looked mysteriously with eyeliner. At this time, a video call sounded on his phone where the girl invited him to go and have a drink. Alex shouted that he would not be able to go anywhere to his school, study and study again. Alex looked at his daughter-in-law in some fear, wondering if she would hit him with a bat again. But the girl replied that there was a special gift for him, but she must prepare to give it before he goes to school. The girl prepared gifts for everyone and also told them not to forget the lunch boxes. The children took the boxes with interest. Alex noted that he himself had a large box. She lowered the box with the gift in front of her husband, noticing that she also bought him a gift. She was interested to see his reaction. He thanked her without changing his facial expression. Adam noted that he now also has a gift. She seems to consider him one of the children. She fed everyone, gave recommendations, and gave gifts. After this, Ilaria went to the western region to visit her grandmother. She showed her granny the new clothes she bought, saying that her husband gave her a bank card and she could spend the money on whatever she wanted. The grandmother was very glad that her granddaughter was treated well, but she should also be grateful to them. At this time, Katrina, her childhood friend, came and brought fish to cook. While the grandmother was talking with Katrina, Iawaria looked out the window and saw a familiar face. There were 4 guys standing under the window, one of whom was handing the other a pack of cigarettes, and the one to whom the cigarettes were being handed was Dylan, her old acquaintance. In a past life, when she got married, she lost contact with him. And Katrina, her friend, started working in the entertainment industry, but she got pregnant. Then she had a miscarriage and fell off the roof. Dylan was in a gang, was accused of a crime, and spent several years in prison. And when he left, it was already too late. Everything around had changed. Ilaria resolutely left the apartment. Appearing next to her childhood friend, she reminded him in the tone of a teacher that she had told him not to smoke. The street punks immediately started teasing her, calling her cute and offering to have fun with them. Ilaria rudely told him that sooner or later she would still get into trouble, so he should stay away from Dylan. He howled, and how dare she talk to him like that? The girl grabbed his hand forcefully, declaring that she hated it when people pointed at her. The next moment she had the bat in her hand. She kicked the leader and he flew to the ground. Scattering the rest, she threw, and that's all they can. One of the gang members croaked what she wants. Ilaria put her index finger to her lips and dialed the police, reporting the attack. When the gang was taken away by the police, the girl began to scold Dylan as a naughty child. She threatened to break his leg if he got involved with bad company again. There is plenty of free time. Let him read books, study, and not hang around. I don't understand where and with whom. When she arrived home, she was surrounded by children asking if she had brought snacks. The girl said that this was not really a snack. She didn't have time to eat properly at her grandmother's house, so she brought what was left. She opened a delicious container with goodies. Everyone wanted to try it. Adam was reading a book. Ilaria asked what about him. If he was hungry, he muttered that he was not hungry. But at this time, his stomach began to growl. Ilaria could not help but smile. How funny and stubborn he was, like a child. As she left, she added that apparently he was very hungry, so she would cook something herself. Before she could get up to the room, she heard the doorbell ring, and a bouquet of flowers appeared before her eyes. It was the older brother of the boy with whom Alex had a fight. He knelt down and presented Ilaria with flowers for her help in raising his unlucky brother. She thanked him, but resolutely made it clear that she could not accept the bouquet. But the hero decided not to stop and declared that as soon as he saw her, he realized that he could not forget her. She was different from 1,000 others, simply perfection itself. Ilaria replied that the roses are beautiful, but the thorns are prickly, and why carry such a large bouquet? They can be seen, and the newspapers will write gossip. But he said that he was used to being the center of attention and invited her to have dinner tomorrow if he got into a scandal. Then with such a beautiful woman like her. At this time, Adam arrived and, glaring at his boyfriend, added that he was ready to join. Ilaria thought to herself, is he really protecting her? Now it's like a completely different person. He behaved like a man, a husband, and not just an outside observer. Closing the door behind the ladies' man, she shouted that her whole family would come for dinner. His reputation was damaged. Was it possible that the married couple defeated him? Adam looked at her and said that if this happens again, let her tell him. Smiling softly, she said that she would definitely tell. In the evening, she came to his room, thanking him again for his help, and brought him the medications that the assistant said he was taking. Adam, visibly nervous, asked to just leave them. Leaning towards him, she jokingly said that the water temperature was just right. He was not afraid of the taste of medicine. The next second, he doubled over in pain, wheezing. Let him leave the medicine on the table. The assistant shouted that the gentleman drinks this medicine when he feels bad. The girl looked at the bottle of pills and was horrified. Adam drinks this, who prescribed it. Tramadol relieves pain, but it is also addictive. These are painkillers. They do not treat the cause. Adam has been on addictive drugs all this time. She sat down with her husband and pleadingly said that let them try to reduce the consumption of such drugs and focus on treatment. She tentatively touched his hand for the first time, saying that he was the support of their family and should take care of himself. Adam again thought to himself, family, and replied that he agreed. The assistant shook his head in surprise at how this medicine could harm the master's body, because they invited the best doctors in the country for consultation. Adam added that he was diagnosed in such a way that he gave up and didn't want to fight. The doctors said that he would have to sit on painkillers for the rest of his life. Ilaria thought that there were a lot of greedy people around, and in the eastern region there was a famous clinic. Something was wrong here, and she needed to consult another doctor. She cheerfully asked her husband how about they spend time together tomorrow. Adam nodded. If she wants, then he is not against it. The next morning, they got into the car. Ilaria was driving. Just as she was about to drive away, she heard voices. Children ran up to the car and began to ask to take them with them. Alex, as the eldest, hugging his brother and sister, begged them to take them and go shopping with them. Ilaria didn't tell anyone that they would go to the clinic first, so she promised the children that next time they would definitely go together. When they were already on the road, the girl asked to tell their stories next time. Adam smiled and said that he would tell. In the mirror of the car, she saw that a car was constantly following them and asked Adam when he had previously gone to the clinic, and he was accompanied like this. The man exhaled and said that it was probably Patrick, his aunt's son, who was acting as director of the Carter Company. Since the accident, he had become just his headache. The girl smiled, dashingly turned the steering wheel and thought, it doesn't matter who he is or what family he's from, no one will stop her from taking her boy to the hospital. The girl confidently pressed the gas pedal. Adam wondered without showing what she was going to do. Ilaria, like a real racer, took the lead, starting in the traffic lane and leaving other cars behind. They sat in the doctor's office. The doctor replied that Adam's situation was treatable. After a minor operation, he will need to take medications on time and undergo regular tests. In the future, Adam will be able to walk as usual. The doctor asked why they didn't come earlier, because this disease could have progressed, especially since these tests don't require so much money. Adam replied that not all diseases can be cured with only money. The nurse brought the results of drug tests after taking the drugs that Adam's previous doctors prescribed. The doctor looked at the results and whistled. These medications can cause irritability, uncontrollable aggression, and pessimistic behavior. Our heroine stood thoughtfully. In families like Adam, there are many unfriendly relatives. In a past life, he died precisely because of depression, probably because of these medications. She even remembered the newspaper headline, "Adam Carter committed suicide." The company was left without a CEO. But in this life, she would not allow this to happen. No one would touch her lion cub. The girl felt tenderness and a desire to protect Adam. She was now like a mother who wants to save her child. Adam took her hand and told her not to worry. He would take care of it. She gently pressed his head to her and said, "Of course, now the main thing is to undergo the course of treatment, and he will be completely healthy." Each of them was in their own thoughts. Adam didn't want her to worry anymore, and Ilaria was thinking about how to get rid of the Chen family. The doctor is already tired of observing their cuteness, thinking why come to the hospital to act like they are on a date, inviting them to come to the counter and pay for the consultation. After the hospital, they arrived at the shopping center. The girl was choosing ties. Adam liked all the ones she chose. Ilaria brought the tie to him and wanted to match the tone of his eyes, trying different options. He looked at her, thinking that she seemed to be choosing clothes for a child. Once again, she brought up the tie, saying that this one was too light. He grabbed her hand with his and, looking into her eyes, thanked her for her concern. The girl was embarrassed. They are now so close to each other. Adam said that he liked the color and material of the tie she was holding in her hand. The discussion of the tie was interrupted by the voice of a girl who told Adam that they had not seen each other for a long time, brother. He hissed angrily that he did not want strangers to bother them. Ilaria asked in surprise that it was his cousin. It was Adam's cousin, Miranda. She grimaced angrily. Why was he ignoring her? Then the girl asked if Adam had gone to the doctor to have his legs examined. Ilaria chuckled. She asked her husband if she was the young lady of the Chen family. He confirmed. Then the girl asked him to wait. She had an idea. Approaching Miranda, she introduced herself as her cousin's wife and said that she didn't know her way around this place very well. Maybe she could help her. Ilaria was the sweetest thing. She smiled innocently. Miranda carefully examined the girl. But this is the brat from the slums. Let's see what we can do with her. They approached the stand with lipsticks, where Miranda praised Barbie-colored lipstick, saying that this is the trend of this season. Ilaria really answered innocently. She assured her sister Ilaria how she could lie to her new relative. Just as she was about to apply makeup on Ilaria's lips, she grabbed her hand. The next second, she pushed her away and the stand of lipsticks flew apart. The saleswomen gasped in fear. Ilaria added that she also thinks that this is a trendy color. Why shouldn't Sister Miranda wear it first? Holding the frightened Miranda, she held the lipstick with sparkling eyes. She resisted to be let go, but Ilaria outlined her lips with lipstick. Then she casually added that she would not offend her husband's sister, so she would give the lipstick to her. She gave the salesperson a bank card, saying that she would pay for all the damaged lipstick. Left on the floor with smeared lipstick, Miranda watched as Miranda left, hatching a plan for immediate revenge. Adam's cousin Patrick was talking to the assistant, discussing that his cousin was out in public for the first time since the accident, buying things, the assistant adding that given his young and beautiful wife, this was not surprising. With a flourish, he threw the newspaper on the floor, telling the secretary that he did not pay money to his son, a doctor, so that his cousin and his wife could coo in public. If Adam gets in his way, the secretary's head will be the first to fly off his shoulder. At that moment, Miranda called him, screaming in a screaming voice that this Ilaria was a real bitch. She humiliated her in front of everyone. He replied that the time would come, and she would be able to take revenge on her. Miranda grinned. She couldn't wait for this moment. When Adam first began to take steps in the world of business, he increased the family's assets several times. In high society, they called him Mr. Carter, and no one dared to go against him. But that car accident, when he lost the ability to walk, was in constant depression. So Patrick became the acting director in order to pave the way for a bright future, and he could not even admit the thought that his cousin would return to the company. Ilaria and Adam returned home after buying presents for the children, who were happily sorting out the gifts. The butler handed her a rare orchid, which meant an invitation to a banquet from Adam's relatives. Wow, it's a banquet! They're clearly up to something. You need to be prepared. Adam said that he physically couldn't go there, so let her attend the banquet on behalf of their family. Great. Then she will take one of the younger ones and they will attend the banquet. The children began vying with each other to ask to be chosen. Everyone wanted to go to the banquet. Then Ilaria put an end to the disputes and said that she would take all three to the banquet. At the banquet, Miranda talked with Adam's younger sister, who lived abroad, talking about how her daughter-in-law was supposed to come to the banquet today. She said that she did not have a daughter-in-law. Who would want an incomprehensible girl from the street to become the daughter-in-law of a family like theirs? Nellie continued to mention that she was horrified when she found out who her brother married. Miranda confirmed that this girl's name is indeed a shame to mention in polite society. Her behavior is vulgar, and she crossed her brother's path. The arrival of the Carter family was announced. Ilaria walked ahead in a luxurious dress, and with her were Adam's younger relatives. Their family had not attended such banquets for a long time. Miranda and Nellie discussed that with such a face, this girl wants to climb into high society. She is not afraid to climb high and fall low. Nellie looked thoughtfully at her brother's wife, saying, "It's not that she doesn't deserve her brother. She has such an aura." Miranda is furious with her. She speaks as if she mistakes her for her daughter-in-law. As a result, Nellie waved her hand and said that she was not interested in all this. She would go and breathe some fresh air. Ilaria and the children enjoyed the banquet. The girl noted that it was much more fun here than she had expected. Suddenly, everyone froze at the sound of breaking porcelain, and the orchid that decorated the banquet hall ended up on the floor. The guests began to say in horror that the beautiful orchid was broken by Nellie Carter. How could it be that she had done it? Here it is Nellie Carter, which means the fourth child of the Carter family has returned to the country. There's only one type of this orchid with double petals in the world. It is also called the crown orchid. They say they even offered $1 billion for it. This is how the Carter family observes etiquette when coming to visit. The banquet hall was buzzing. Nellie was completely confused. She tried to justify herself. It wasn't her. Someone pushed her. The host of the banquet sternly told the girl that from now on his family would not invite members of the Carter family to events. Nellie tried to apologize that the Carter family had nothing to do with it. If anyone was to blame, it would be her. The guests whispered in fear about whether now two influential families would share power in the city. Ilaria heard someone say what Adam Carter can do now. He cannot stand up for himself, so his brothers and sisters are forced to endure such an attitude. Miranda, reveling in her victory, approached the pale and frightened Nellie and sarcastically said, "You see how many problems are because of you." Finishing off and humiliating the girl, she continued to tell her how ignorant she was and she couldn't help. Suddenly, someone firmly and confidently put his hand on her shoulder, saying hello. "Would you like to turn to me?" Just having time to ask who it was, she was hit in the face so hard that she couldn't stay on her feet. Sitting on the floor and holding her hand to her cheek, red from the blow, she shouted angrily, for which Ilaria hit her. It was all Nellie's fault. Ilaria said loudly, indignantly, "The Carter family and her family used to be so friendly, so why now that your sister is in trouble she is gloating so much?" She demanded an immediate apology to Nellie. But Miranda, grimacing with anger, answered why she should apologize when Ilaria hit her in front of everyone. Rising to her feet, she went to Ilaria, shouting that she would never forgive her. Ilaria said that her husband's family has always treated her family well. Moreover, after the accident, they entrusted her with managing the company. But does the head know how Miranda treats her cousins? And then she dashingly knocked Miranda back onto the floor, declaring that she was an arrogant and brainless fool and should apologize now. Crawling away on all fours in a whisper, still not having recovered from the blow, she whispered an apology to Nellie. Ilaria told her that it was Mrs. Miranda who was whispering so quietly. Apparently she hadn't eaten anything or her throat hurt. Maybe she could call a doctor. Then Miranda loudly asked Nellie to forgive her stupid sister. The head of the banquet, after all this, added that since they had resolved family problems, then let them leave. His house is too small to interfere with the whole Carter family. Ilaria remembered how she was taught in a past life to care for orchids. She tried her best to please her high-ranking family and their relatives. They used her as a working tool, and then just got rid of her. But since she's Madame Carter now, she has a chance. Ilaria approached the head and asked as convincingly as possible not to be offended by her family, her youngest, obedient, and well-mannered children. But the gentleman replied that she was possible and could cope with any problem. But the Carter family was responsible for this misunderstanding. Ilaria agreed that her family had made a mistake and should be held accountable for it. She picked up the orchid and said that not long ago she learned how to care for orchids, so she wants to try to revive it. And if it doesn't work, then her family is ready to pay whatever money he wants. The grandson of the gentleman asked his grandfather to give the young lady a chance. In the end, the head agreed and gave 3 months. Ilaria, seeing the young man, recognized him as the same doctor. It turns out he is from this family. The girl also asked to be allowed to check the CCTV cameras. Miranda immediately yelled that if he wants to, let him go and look. Ilaria came up to her, took her by the chin, and asked why she was so excited. Maybe she pushed Nellie. Miranda stated that Nellie stood very close to the orchid and on tiptoe, so that anyone could push her. Nellie indignantly answered Miranda. If someone had stood with her, it would have been impossible to see how she stood. In general, how did she know how she stood? People looked at Miranda condemningly. It was she who shouted that Mrs. Carter was to blame. How could she be so vile and frame her own relative like that? Ilaria and Nellie approached her. Miranda timidly backed away from them so that they would not approach, leaving out the fact that she had already been beaten today. The girls answered, "She thought this was the end. No, this is just the beginning." Ilaria suggested that Nellie give this vile boor another slap in the face. Nellie, with the words, "She is the 4th Mrs. Carter," slapped her relative in the face with great pleasure. The young doctor, looking with contempt at the humiliated Miranda sitting on the floor, said that no one would invite her to the banquet again. She sat red from humiliation, thinking angrily that her reputation had come to an end. The girls at the banquet surrounded Ilaria, Nellie, and Victoria. Everyone showered compliments on Ilaria. She is so beautiful. And what kind of skin, what kind of cosmetics does she use? Victoria, who was very afraid of the crowd, pressed herself close to Ilaria and whispered that they were surrounded. Then she heard the sound of a piano. Someone was playing. A beautiful melody spread through the living room. The guests turned to the pianist. It was Lady Margaret, famous in the country, who was recruiting students. The 2 angry guests, looking at Victoria, said with a grin, "Because young Lady Carter is also playing. So why don't she try to play now? Maybe Lady Margaret will choose her." The girl said nothing, lowering her eyes. Nellie threatened them that now her daughter-in-law would get to them. They noticed that they simply suggested that the young miss try her hand, mocking Victoria, who, when she played for the last time, was trembling and crying. Ilaria stood next to Victoria, who was barely holding back tears, saying that she didn't think that Lady Margaret accepted as students those who humiliated others. The woman finished playing and said that Ilaria was right. Everyone today can try their hand, and she will just enjoy the music like an ordinary listener. The woman invited Victoria to try and play. One of the spiteful critics left. Let him go. She still doesn't believe that this mediocre girl is capable of anything. Ilaria took the girl by the hand and said that she would take her to the stage. She believed in her. Victoria's face brightened and she smiled and thanked Ilaria. The girl sat down at the piano. All the guests' eyes were turned to her. Ilaria stood nearby. Ilaria, looking into the eyes of her young sister-in-law, told her not to pay attention to anyone, to simply forget that anyone was there, and to completely immerse herself in the music and her emotions. Everything else is not important. And Victoria began to play. She immersed herself in the mood of the melody, forgetting about everything and everyone. People began to say that she was playing well, as expected from the lady of the Carter family. Victory at that moment was more beautiful and sophisticated than ever. She seemed to be in another world that her fingers were tapping on the piano. She woke up when she finished the game and the guests applauded her. Lady Margaret praised the young pianist, saying that she was the most talented she had ever heard, and of course she wanted to take her on as a student. The celebration continued at home. Alex set off firecrackers in honor of his sister. Ilaria and all the children congratulated Victoria on such success. Nellie came away from this fun and, after congratulations, went to Adam with a guilty look. Adam immediately sternly reprimanded her that she did not distinguish between who was loyal to her and who was a traitor. Nellie understood her guilt, so she listened silently. Ilaria entered the room and playfully told her husband that he should trust her, but of course he couldn't protect Nellie for the rest of his life. In her tone, Adam jokingly answered whether his wife was too protective and protective of them all. The girl gently patted her husband on the cheeks, sweetly saying that he, like everyone else, is her family, and she wants to protect him too. Adam took her hand and called her wife, then, unexpectedly for Ilaria, pulled her towards him. She couldn't resist and fell on him. Adam noticed that she was treating him like a child. Hugging her, he quietly said that he was not only an adult man, but also her husband. He sat her on his knees and said that his wife was like an imperious president from a literary novel, and this was not about raising children. Gently hugging his wife by the waist, he said that now she can rely on him. Their cooing was interrupted by Nellie's voice, who ran into the room shouting that the orchids were very bad. Ilaria looked at the pale flower with concern, thinking that even with such experience, she made a mistake. Nellie said that she just came to see how the flower was doing. She didn't think that this would happen, but Ilaria reassured her by saying that she would find a way to help the flower. She thought that she needed to go to her grandfather and ask for an ancient book on caring for orchids, just like in her previous life. Not knowing whether the timeline had changed due to rebirth, but the heroine of this story decided to hurry up. The maid came in and told Adam that a young man was looking for Mrs. Ilaria, but she was not at home right now. Adam told him to come and went down to the living room where Dylan was sitting. When asked who he was, Dylan flared up and replied that Ilaria was a living person, not a doll, and that now, being married to him, she could not see her friends. Adam, looking at the young man, calmly replied that his wife went to the western region in the morning. If there is something to say, he can tell him. Dylan jumped up and shouted that now the gang would definitely want to take revenge on her. Adam alarmedly demanded to know what was going on. Dylan told how recently, defending him, Ilaria imprisoned the leader. Now they have a grudge against her. Adam immediately ordered to go and find her. Ilaria was walking down the street when she heard a familiar voice calling her. Dylan was walking, and an assistant was carrying Adam in a wheelchair. He was in utter amazement. Dylan began to explain why they were looking for her. He heard from his grandfather that she needed a book on caring for orchids. He went to his grandfather and took this book for her and handed the book to the girl. He missed the details of how hard it was to beg this rare book from his grandfather. Having thanked her friend, Ilaria now understood why her grandfather was so angry when she came to him. He is Dylan's own grandfather. Their conversation was interrupted by the barking of dogs that ran towards them. Dylan, covering Ilaria, stepped out at the street dogs. The girl shouted at him to be careful. Dallin kicked the dogs away. He and Ilaria held hands, which amazed Adam and his assistant. A squabble began between the men. Dylan threw out Adam in annoyance. He didn't know that Ilaria was afraid of dogs. He always protected her as a child. Adam looked seriously at his wife and said that it was all just dogs. But now he is her husband and she has a family. He will not allow her to go through all this again. Dylan, in turn, said that although he is not as good as Adam's family, as long as he is alive, he will do everything possible to protect his girlfriend. To avoid a bigger scandal, Ilaria stood between them, reminding Dylan that it was time to go to work. He said that since she was fine and he handed over the book, he would go. Ilaria took Adam. He noticed that she had a faithful friend. The girl agreed that Dylan and her childhood friend were like family. She drove him to the place of their childhood games, showing on the wall the marks of her height that they left. Adam noted with irony that his wife, even in childhood, was an authority. The girl was embarrassed, noting that she was winning with arguments. Then she seriously asked Adam to tell him about himself. She wanted to know about his life, he promised. At that moment, two of the gang recognized her and said that she had framed their brother, who was now behind bars, and they would now take revenge on her. Adam worriedly said that he should help her. This area is really dangerous. But Ilaria took out a bat out of nowhere and said that he would only get in the way. She would figure it out. The girl stood up on alert, declaring that she was here with her husband. With all her strength, she brought it down on the big man who approached her. Then she kicked her attacking accomplice, calling both rotten fish and shrimp. Having given in to the big man once again, she brought him down to the ground, groaning in pain. Adam's assistant looked out from behind the wheelchair in horror. Adam, watching the picture where his wife was throwing healthy men around, thought he was in an action movie. When the girl victoriously threw her leg over the defeated enemy, the assistant whispered to Adam that he had better obey his wife in everything. Then she approached her husband, who gently took her hand and said that her talents were amazing. First an orchid, now kung fu. He doesn't even know what else she will surprise him with. At that moment, the phone rang. A call from Blake's school. The teacher said that there were problems in the boy's behavior. We need to pay more attention to his mental state. When the boy arrived home, Ilaria and Adam looked at his picture, which alarmed the teachers. Ilaria thought that this child seemed normal to her, unlike the rest of the family, but she was wrong. He also had an injury. His father was that playboy who was always surrounded by women, which is what he depicted in the picture. Blake is just the aftermath of a passionate night between barely familiar people. If no one pays attention to it, it will become a big problem. Ilaria approached the child and asked to show the rest of the drawings in the studio. When the boy led them, he asked if they would not scold him, but Adam noted that he had not done anything wrong. Blake agreed to show his work. They came to his studio. All the paintings were hung up. Ilaria asked to show the works. She tried not to put pressure on Blake, seeing how hard it was for him. The boy agreed to show one picture and going up to it, threw off the cloth. In the picture, like in a horror film, an exhausted creature in tattered clothes was sitting in a cage. Blake, with a devilish glint in his eyes, explained that he was an elf, and the people from his world thought that he should not live. Thus he was rejected by the world, and everyone hated him and wanted him dead. Ilaria, moving away from her stupor, approached Blake. He thought that his drawing was ugly, but she said that his idea was unique, but she suggested adding one detail. The boy agreed. She took his hand and began to move it around the picture. The boy sadly asked if she thought this picture looked like a perversion. Ilaria, adding touches, said that each child is unique, and she is not going to make him fit the standards. But he is still so young, and the paintings should be more saturated with color. She completed the drawing of the beautiful pink flower that the hero of the picture was looking at and explained that one detail can change the whole meaning of the picture. Then she told Blake to look at the world from a different angle. Then he could color this gray world in his eyes. She added that she was here to make his world brighter and richer. Blake thought that when he picked up a brush, his biological mother cursed him again and again. Every time he showed her his paintings, she screamed at him and drove him away, saying that no one would like such works. Now he felt what it meant to be recognized, and Adam noticed that the boy could tell them everything. They were family. The older brother also promised that in the future, he would invite professional artists to help Blake develop his talent. Ilaria, following the instructions from the book, poured water on the orchid. At that moment, Adam called her. She got distracted and asked what he wanted. Adam thanked her for everything she does for his family. He looked at his wife with admiration and respect, realizing how much she had done in such a short time. Ilaria replied with a smile that this was her responsibility. Adam thought, she only wants to take care of the family. Doesn't she need love? Adam silently watched as she delightedly talked about the orchid, following the instructions from the book, and immediately saw the result. Ilaria offered to invite Dylan to their home for dinner. After all, he helped them a lot. He became gloomy and muttered that he would think about it. She looked at her husband and wondered what was wrong with his face, why he suddenly became gloomy. Already at the door, he said that after that car accident, his family was silent for a long time. He asked her to start preparing the banquet, to make everything as lively as possible. Ilaria said that she would do everything in the best possible way, and also prepare a list of guests and show it to him. Adam, embarrassed, added that it was not his changeable mood. It was just that his wife was so popular that he was in some kind of despair. Having received the invitation, Miranda screamed and was indignant that she would not go to the banquet with that family. Her brother tried to convince her, but she continued to scream that this rubbish would then feel like a winner. He stopped her hysteria with a sharp movement, declaring that she was obliged to go there and would go. If the Carters were not completely in his hands, then they would not be able to destroy them. If she messes up again, don't blame him for being rude to her. Blake was next to Ilaria at the banquet. He voluntarily agreed to entertain the guests. He needed to learn how to communicate and behave in society. Ilaria encouraged him and suggested that he think of them as Chinese cabbage. The next second she was called, she saw Miranda and Patrick. Miranda said that she came to apologize for her behavior at the last banquet. There was clearly something wrong with her. Blake came out and told her not to think that they would believe her just because she was from the Chan family. In an unctuous voice, Miranda convinced of her sincerity. She even invited her sister, whom she had not seen for a long time. Before the stunned Ilaria could open her mouth, Vanessa appeared and said that she missed her very much. She wondered if Miranda was really that brainless or was she just pretending. Vanessa, giggling stupidly, walked up to Blake and touched his face, calling him such a handsome boy. He was apparently Adam's younger brother. Blake shook off her hand with irritation. Then Vanessa said in a trembling voice that her sister really hated her so much that even her husband's younger brother felt hostility. Then she added that she wanted her sister to be happy, that's all. Ilaria proudly patted Blake on the head, saying that she had such a good little boy. Perhaps the problem was with the person who touched him. Vanessa, with her usual tearful face, wanted to burst into tears, as usual begging her sister, but they were approached. A young man with an insolent and impudent look said that Madame was making a mountain out of a mountain, and this boy might be afraid of other people's touches. Vanessa looked at him beaming, thinking how handsome he was. It was Andrew, her husband from a past life. He unceremoniously put his arm around her waist, declaring that the time he met her near the slums, she fell deeply into his soul. Oh yes, it was before the wedding, but he still remembers he's as sticky as a Band-Aid. The girl pushed him away and in a cold voice ordered him to behave decently, to which he replied that her mercy was now being repaid to her by a spring. He also continued to approach her and hugged her around the waist again, reminding her that she saved him. She again threw his hand away, reminding him of the distance. He brazenly declared that no woman had ever rejected him like that. She was just cruelly playing with him. Ingrid told him that he was thick-skinned and unscrupulous at the same time. It was clear that this shook his pride. He asked why she also answered him harshly. Then he leaned towards her again, smiling impudently, and stated that in any case, he had 4 intact limbs and did not need to be taken care of. He was better than her disabled husband. She quickly removed his hand, declaring that she was not obliged to listen to this, especially from a stranger. The guests began to glance at them, gossiping that Ilaria was flirting with men in front of everyone. It seems this family has fallen low. Someone said that he never thought that an influential president would be cuckolded. Vanessa ran up to them and told her sister to stop flirting with men in public, even if she doesn't love her husband. But how will he then look people in the eyes? Blake called her a stupid woman. How dare she say that about his daughter-in-law? Vanessa stated that he is still a child and does not understand much. She says this for the benefit of her sister. Ilaria, approaching her, said that she was forgetting one thing, that she herself was the fruit of vice, an illegitimate, shameful child, so how dare she say such things? She opened her eyes and said in horror that this was all nonsense, not true. Looking at her younger sister with contempt, Ilaria added that she could cite facts about the depravity of her birth, but she only muttered that she was trying to help her sister. Why was she behaving so strangely? After pouring champagne on her, Ilaria told her to wash out her vicious mouth. Ilaria contemptuously threatened that if she once again fails to keep her mouth shut, then the ending will be different. The sister and her Andrew left the banquet, and Ilaria, to relieve stress and anger at Vanessa, took the wine glass from the table and drank. The guests gossiped that this Ilaria was a cruel woman. Even her sister ran away from her. They say she grew up in the slums. How could she become a member of such a family? Driving past the guests and hearing the gossip, Adam rode, saying that he was grateful that they were worried about his wife, but he hoped for the wisdom of the guests. Then he added that not long ago he was in a car accident, but miraculously survived, so his family is precious. He smiled at Dina and asked her that she was thinking the same thing, but the girl looked strangely ahead of herself. She didn't quite understand what was happening. Her head was spinning. The next second, she jumped out of the living room. Someone began to whisper, apparently out of remorse. Miranda thought that she did a good job this time, and her brother would not scold her. He thought, why the hell did she bring this younger sister of Ilaria? Everyone knows that they don't get along well. Alex watched in horror as his brother went to catch up with Ilaria. He was afraid that she, being drunk, would beat him with a bat. When he admitted out loud what he was afraid of, they called him a sick child and advised him to go to a psychiatrist. Adam found Ilaria, who was sitting on the sofa and writing something down. She smiled at him and asked with joy he came. Adam sighed with relief that everything was fine with her. He asked what she was writing there. The girl replied that she was thinking about how to properly use his 50 million. At today's banquet, the Chen family actually trampled on their dignity, apologized superficially, and even dared to make a joke. Miranda is really dangerous, but Patrick is more dangerous, so she wants to use this 50 million to teach him a lesson. He approached and asked how exactly she wanted to spend it. She could tell him everything, and if it wasn't enough, he would give more. Ilaria smiled and asked after the banquet he would visit her grandmother with her. Of course, Adam agreed. They wanted to say something else to each other at the same time, but then the girl replied that she just wanted to thank him. She remembered how in a past life, having married Andrew and entering his family, his suit constantly humiliated her, that it was already a year after the wedding, and she still had not become pregnant. She was simply trampled into the mud, and she was stuck there for a long time, continuing to lie to herself. Suddenly she said out loud that it was good that this time she met him, looking at Adam. He was a little surprised by these words, but said that as long as he was around, she had nothing to fear. She smiled happily and hugged him. And what did he want to say? He asked if she drank alcohol today. The girl smiled while sitting on his lap. Then, showing that just a little bit, just a drop, Adam answered her that she was drunk. Ilaria thought in confusion that it was true. She felt as if her strength was leaving her. He affectionately called her stupid. The girl asked why he still looked at her like that. Then she asked if she was beautiful and received the answer that she was very beautiful. They kissed. Adam kissed his wife with love and tender passion, wanted to say something to her, but noticed that she had stopped moving. Laying her head on his shoulder, she fell asleep while he kissed her. Fatigue and intoxication overpowered her. Adam was surprised. Well, how could she fall asleep at such a moment? He tenderly kissed the sleeping Ilaria on the forehead, wishing sweet dreams to Mrs. Carter. In the morning, Alex had a nightmare where his daughter-in-law eats his older brother. Adam and Ilaria were driving in the car. She was embarrassed by what she had done yesterday, and Adam thought why his wife didn't ask him today if she was fair. When they arrived, the girl took him to his grandmother's house, saying that she really wanted to meet him. When she opened the door to the apartment, she heard the voice of her grandmother who said, "Let him take this man and get out of here." Sharply opening the door and entering, she saw Vanessa and Andrew, who did not expect to see her here. They asked why she came here. Meanwhile, the grandmother tried to send Vanessa and her friend away. Vanessa stared at Adam, who drove in next, and it began to dawn on her that since he was in a wheelchair, it was Adam, her sister's husband. She wondered, shouldn't he be an unkempt and ugly person? He looks so handsome. She asked Adam Carter if he was still looking away. He looked at his wife. Then Vanessa introduced herself and asked if he recognized her. Adam answered with a grin, and he should know her. She replied that she was supposed to become his bride. She is Ilaria's younger sister, and asks him to come to terms with her sister's temper. He added sarcastically that apparently the girl clearly doesn't know her sister well, with whom he is very pleased. In his eyes, she is sweet and kind. She takes care of him, and he is very glad that she became his wife. Unnoticed, Adam and Ilaria began to flirt. He added that she doubted that anyone loved her more. Andrew turned to her with his usual cheeky smile, and Vanessa was overcome with envy. It all should have belonged to her. Ilaria did not let him finish, saying that they did not know each other closely, and therefore she asked to leave this house, where he was clearly not welcome. An evil light lit up in his eyes, but Vanessa took him by the arm and began to lead him away. She apologized for the disturbance and pulled the man along with her. Ilaria looked after the retreating couple. They both irritated her terribly and were unpleasant. On the street, Andrew angrily pushed Vanessa away, so she pulled him out of there by force. Vanessa, putting on an innocent face, said that she wanted to save her sister from suffering in the Carter family. She was unhappy there, but if she married him, she would be happy. Andrew happily agreed. He liked the idea. They shook hands as a sign of cooperation. He noticed that this woman was quite interesting. He clearly underestimated her, and that simple face hides something more. Vanessa was obsessed with the idea of becoming Adam's wife and being in her sister's place. Thus, each of them received his goal. Meanwhile, Ilaria asked what this couple wanted. The granny said that if she marries Adam, she will become a bad person. They also said that Ilaria was allegedly deceived for $50 million. The granny expressed concern for her granddaughter. There is clearly a danger here. The girl said that she and Adam specifically threw bait for one person, and her husband gave her the money, by the way. Here's her Adam. The young man introduced himself to the woman, and she immediately liked him. Granny began to pat him on the cheek, saying that he was a good boy, and asked if Ilaria had offended him, and when they were planning children, she would help with their upbringing. When they arrived home, Ilaria laughingly teased her husband that he was clearly stunned. Adam agreed. He has a wife with such a cool disposition, and now a grandmother with such a character. Ilaria thought that they published the news about $50 million only yesterday, but how quickly it spread, two people already took the bait and wanted to turn it to their advantage. When they entered the house, Adam's Aunt Nora was waiting for them, who was drinking tea while waiting for them. Great, Ilaria rejoiced. Here's another one who fell for the news and wants to profit from it. The aunt, examining her nephew's wife, wanted to talk about the investment company that she had bought. The girl replied that her assistant recommended this company to her, and she herself was not very good at it. Nora rated her as a stupid person who was easy to deceive and praised her out loud for her initiative. Her aunt would fully support her. She stated that she herself is involved in investing. Her biggest income was when she received 10 times more from the initial investment. Ilaria, following the script, looked interested and asked what her aunt was investing in. She began to talk about a company with a good future. Nora shared that she was going to invest soon, and Ilaria, batting her eyes, asked to take her with her. Otherwise, she doesn't understand anything about it yet. Adam's aunt thought that this was a money laundering company. She might see the wrong thing. Although this girl didn't even graduate from university, her subordinates would fool this fool around their finger. Right tomorrow, she promised to take her new relative to this company, but she shouldn't tell anyone. The money shouldn't be shown off. Left with Adam, she clarified that this was a foreign trade company given to her aunt when his old master was alive. These words pleasantly surprised Adam. Ilaria said that she read in one of the documents, old Mr. Carter wanted to keep her away from the conglomerate. This Patrick is very ambitious, and his aunt is his leading pawn. Adam said sadly that he had clearly underestimated his cousin. As it turns out, there are a lot of greedy people around, even among relatives. Ilaria grinned, remembering his impatient aunt. The man warned her that tomorrow she must take an assistant when she goes to the company and be careful. Employees removed unnecessary papers that might seem suspicious to Ilaria. They discussed whether to move all the things. One noticed that although the girl was smart, she was only a college graduate. There was no point in showing her something that she wouldn't understand and might be scared of. Ilaria came to the company, and this is the same organization. She came in with an assistant with whom they could talk, while she herself looked around. Pretending to look as carefree as possible, our heroine innocently examined everything. The employees immediately began to whisper that the girl was very beautiful, but stupid. This was immediately obvious. In turn, Ilaria looked at the employees who were waiting for her, thinking that they were all muscles and no brains. In the office, she sat down at the table and thought, this is what it's like to be a boss. Suddenly, her eyes fell on the computer monitor. She clicked on the folder and a spreadsheet opened. It was incredible. They didn't even hide it. But now they can be handcuffed. The aunt arrived, and the assistant was talking with the employees of her company. When one of them entered the office, he broke out in a cold sweat. Ilaria thoughtfully clicked something on the computer. Had she really found their fake documents? But when she got up and left the table, their mouths opened, so she played sapper. Then the assistant began to report information to her, but Ilaria deliberately said loudly that she didn't understand anything. She just needed to know whether to invest or not. Hearing this, Aunt Nora came up and chirped with a tense smile that they were a family. Would she lie to her? There was not much time, and this was a very profitable investment. Ilaria smiled back at Auntie Scala, let her wait for good news. Leaving home, Ilaria praised her assistant for her excellent acting skills. At home, the girl played in front of Adam with a flash drive on which she downloaded all the documents. Everything was very simple. Suddenly, Alex screamed. Someone started rumors about Ilaria on the internet. Photo in the feed where she is with Andrew, who pestered her. Look how one of the Carters is having fun, seducing several handsome men at once. Footage of Dylan in the Western District has also surfaced, along with disorderly behavior. Here's a shot of a street fight and a bunch of negative comments, like how a street girl ends up in the Carter family thanks to her body. This woman has no talents or social skills. Look at how she treats guests. Alex tore and screamed, offering to find him and beat him up or hire a lawyer and sue him. Adam called on his younger brother to calm down. Public opinion. This is not a game, but a war without gunpowder. Ilaria also thanked the young man for his concern, assuring her that everything would be fine. They heard the door open in the hotel. She came down and saw her father and, as usual, Vanessa hugging him, who was yelling that she had disgraced their family, calling her a slut and an adulteress. But when he mentioned her grandmother, who raised the girl, she ordered her to shut her mouth, or she was not responsible for herself. The father's face distorted with rage, and his words that she is a shame. How dare she beat her sister, who is trying to set her on the right path? Ilaria threw a glass of water in his face. The man froze in surprise, but his eyes still exuded rage. Ilaria told him that it was all his family's fault, and that he was a sick psychopath. Father was ready to fight, but Vanessa whispered to him that Mr. Carter was here. Seeing Adam, Mr. Ruin began to apologize for his disgraceful and scandalous daughter, and promised that his family would punish Ilaria for this. It was his fault that he raised his daughter so poorly. Adam agreed that the Ruin family neglected their eldest daughter, and fortunately, his wife did not take part in raising Ilaria, thanks to which she grew up the way she is. Vanessa stammered that Dad was just very angry. Adam continued to say that since they were all not interested in the life of his wife for 20 years, there is no need to appear here again. If they throw something out, they will be very sorry. And Ilaria is now his wife, and no one dares to criticize her. He then ordered the guard to escort these people out the door. Alex happily said loudly outside the door that now every dog can come and bark like that. Ilaria laughed. She didn't think that her hubby would be so angry. Adam replied that he would not allow his wife to suffer, but for now let him rest with Alex, and he would take care of everything. Alex ran up the stairs, saying that he couldn't stand these boobs. Ilaria, turning into a teacher, strictly shouted after him not to run like that. Otherwise, he'd break his legs, and she'd go up and check his homework. Adam thought about his relatives. Can they really not get enough of money and shares? They are becoming more and more rude. They called him. At the other end of the phone, they said that their specialist had arrived in the country, so he could prepare for the next steps. Great, now we can finally start. The law firm of Ilaria Ruin's client will investigate and find the gossip monger, and old photos have begun to be deleted and new ones have appeared, showing that Lady Ilaria has become a victim of ill wishers. Mr. Dillon is not Madame's lover, he is her friend. Along with them on that street was her husband Adam Carter and a photo from the Western District. And under the photo of Ilaria and Andrew there is a signature. The gentleman took the initiative to pester Mrs. Ilaria, but from the photo it is clear that she is completely unpleasant about it. Satisfied, Adam read the comments in the feed and never ceased to admire his wife. He told the assistant that he needed to go to a foreign branch for work. When does the gentleman plan to leave tomorrow? Adam answered. Patrick joined the company with his uncle, who could barely stand on his feet and had already managed to get drunk. The man said that this Mrs. Ilaria was here today to inspect the company. He deceived her, and she just sat and played cards on the computer. The words that his cousin's wife was here alarmed him, and he went to his work computer. What the hell, really? He saw that a copy of the folder with all the important documents had been made. He yelled why the hell she wasn't being followed. She copied all the company's confidential documents. The guy instantly sobered up. but she was playing cards, to which Patrick yelled that they really believed that Adam's wife could be such a fool. The man trembled in horror and asked his nephew what to do. Baring his teeth predatorily, he said that a dead man cannot speak. Ilaria was reported that her cousin's family was using a nightclub to launder money. Then Ilaria ordered to contact the police and convey this information incognito. Ilaria wanted to call Adam. I think he said that he would go on a business trip. At that moment, turning between the buildings, she saw two smiling men. Well, it's time to teach them a lesson. They apparently can't wait to get it. Walking past them and squinting, she prepared to deflect the blow. But at that same second, she saw a rag near her face with a pungent smell. Before they could do anything, they covered her nose with a rag and she lost consciousness. The girl woke up lying tied up on the sofa where she was. Then, looking around, she realized that this was apparently the same nightclub that was used for money laundering. She needs to buy time for the headache to go away, and her hands are tied behind her. She kicked the bottle off the table with a sharp blow. The bottle with the grotto began to shatter, and one of the gang entered the room. Ilaria ordered to invite the boss. The man looking at her was surprised that the girl did not have a drop of fear. Others from this gang entered. It was necessary to report to the boss that she had woken up. At the same time, a beautiful girl who was an escort here entered the room. She wanted to look at the new girl. The girl admired Ilaria's beauty and said that it was not surprising that the boss brought her. She could talk to the new girl to teach her how to behave. He chuckled, but the girl approached Ilaria and smilingly said that if she was obedient, the boss would not offend her. Then she bent down and said seriously, "All the girls who end up here cry about their lives, but this is their fate. They just need to accept it, then it will be easier to live." Ilaria answered her that she would never resign herself to such a fate. If she had reconciled herself, she would have already died. These words struck the escort. She hugged Ilaria and said that then she would only have to suffer. Approaching her from behind, she cut the ropes on her arms. Then the guard ordered to stop messing with the new girl and go meet the client. Ilaria was amazed. This girl was now risking her life to help her. She shouted her name. The girl stopped at the door, smiled, and called herself Begonia, who in turn thought that someone like Ilaria did not belong here. Half an hour later, the boss entered the room smiling contentedly. When asked why she was brought here, he replied that he gave his word to the lady, but she not only touched his subordinates, but also stole something important from his friend, so he had no choice. Then he added that he was just playing a little trick, and now she would entertain his brothers. Yeah, now, the girl quickly took a bottle from the table. Holding it out in front of her, she prepared to strike. There were 3 of them, and she was alone. The first one rushed to her with the words that she would die today and got hit on the head. The rest stood in confused anger. No one expected the girl to untie her hands. Looking into their eyes, Ilaria was ready to kill all 3, saying that all 3 would die today. The second one flew up to her with a metal pipe, and the girl deftly hit him between the legs. Then she was hit on the back and knocked to the floor. One of the criminals shouted that the police were here. The boss and the others ran and said to get rid of the girl. Ilaria took the metal pipe and shouted to the boss to stand. But the 2 remaining members of the gang advised her to save herself. At this time, Alex flew in with a club and shouting how dare he offend his daughter-in-law. But the bandit punched the guy to the floor. Alex sat wiping his wound, thinking that now they would laugh at him all year. Approaching Ilaria, the bandit looked contemptuously at Alex, calling him an unfinished hero. Afterwards, Ilaria hit him with a pipe, saying that no one dares to touch her youngest. She went up to the wound and applied a napkin to his wound, saying that she would call an ambulance. Alex said that everything was fine with him. Let her catch up with those men, and he would call his brother, and he would come here with his people. Ilaria nodded at him, thinking that the children in the Carter family were much more intelligent than their peers. She left the building and found the hiding leader, asking where he was in such a hurry. He hissed, creaking with anger, that he had offended her today. But now she is free. They are even. Be sure to beat them. Ilaria said that because of him, so many families were destroyed. Many girls found themselves in the very abyss, and besides, his people injured his youngest. After she said that he would pay for his actions, the boss took out a red earring and showed it to her, giggling disgustingly. Ilaria immediately recognized Begonia's earring. Anger, rage, and horror for the unfortunate girl gripped Ilaria. She screamed what they had done to Begonia. Having stabbed Ilaria with a knife in the shoulder, one of the bandits said that they had taught her a lesson. And if she weren't Adam Carter's wife, she would have become his personal escort. He approached to kill her, but at the last moment, Ilaria managed to dodge. Having made a turn, she found herself on the other side and hit him with a club with all her might. Blood sprayed out. He lay motionless. The girl said that she would now send him to hell. After that, she felt severe pain and slid down the wall, thinking about what Adam was doing now. Consciousness left her when she saw him in his chair, rushing towards her, shouting her name. It's him. Does she really mean that much to him? In the hospital, Ilaria gave evidence to the police. Adam diligently cut an apple. The police officer said that she had recorded everything. If there was nothing to add, then she would go. But Ilaria stopped her. She asked if yesterday the police managed to save a girl named Begonia, the same height as her, very beautiful. The police officer began checking the database, and Adam handed his wife a cube apple, which he had carefully cut out for her. Biting off an apple, the girl thought that Begonia was smart, so she probably managed to escape. But the employee found the information. She apologized. But the girl named Begonia was found dead. The apple fell from Ilaria's hands. But how could it be that the boss killed her so cruelly because she was saved only thanks to Begonia? She was the first person who helped her for no reason, and she could not help her. This girl herself was in a swamp of despair, but she came to the rescue, giving her life for the sake of a girl she did not know. Tears poured from Ilaria's eyes. Adam took her hand and began to calm her down. He gently wiped away her tears, whispering that she should not cry. Begonia's death broke her heart. She should have killed that bastard before he killed the girl. Adam looked into her eyes and said that he could help fill her emptiness. Although they could not save Begonia, but they could prevent other girls from being recruited. They would create a fund for girls in trouble. They will invest part of the profits from previous investments in him, and Ilaria can invite investors who were deceived by his aunt and invest with them. Ilaria beamed. Invest money in such a fund to save as many destinies as possible. She kissed him with all her love and gratitude. Thank you for always supporting me in all my endeavors. Adam whispered that he admired her very much. At that moment, Alex entered, having received first aid, and saw a sweet picture. The guy shouted that he didn't see anything, and Adam, grinning, said that the hero should receive praise for saving his daughter-in-law. Walking with Adam and Alex after being discharged from the hospital, Ilaria said that she wanted to go to the library and read books to broaden her horizons. And she would also like to create a foundation so that people like her could receive a quality education in due time. Adam supported his wife in everything. Then the cunning Alex threw money at his brother to open a nightclub and received a big kick. A joyful Nellie came out to meet them. She was holding a pot of orchid and reported that the flower had produced its first bud. Ilaria and Alex abandoned Adam, who remained sitting in the stroller, and ran to look at the orchid. Looking at Ilaria, he thought that sometimes his wife resembles a child. An assistant approached Adam and said that he had found out everything. The boss was split, that Patrick was in conspiracy with him. It was he who ordered the raping and murder of Mrs. Carter. And the night before yesterday, they went to that company. Adam clenched his fists angrily, thinking that his cousin was getting deeper and deeper into that hole from which he would never come out. He then ordered an accomplice to the head of the Guji family that the orchid had been saved and that they were holding a flower party next week. Adam also learned from the assistant that the results of post-operative treatment had arrived. All indicators were normal. Nothing stood in the way of a full recovery. And while listening to the report, he looked at his wife. Remembering the hospital, seeing her burst into tears for the first time before his eyes, he felt so helpless. He dreamed of how he would get back on his feet and whether she would be happy. Will she allow herself to be hugged? He so wanted to take her in his arms and kiss her. His dreams were interrupted by Ilaria, saying that Mr. Guji said that he wanted to look at the orchid in a couple of days. Adam asked her to prepare everything for the flower party. He also ordered the assistant to invite members of both families, but not to invite Patrick. Oh, her husband is up to something! Ilaria smiled playfully. Adam agreed and explained that the shareholders' meeting is coming soon, so the old people are starting to worry, and Patrick will not miss the opportunity to take advantage of this and remove him, which is why it is now important to establish cooperation with the Guji family. Of course, she will help him. Everything will be of the highest standard. Adam was unable to say a word about his operation. As soon as he opened his mouth, Nellie screamed that it seemed the orchid was not feeling very well, and the girl ran into the house like a bullet. Adam already thought that this flower was hatching an insidious plan to take his wife away from him. In the kitchen, he again failed to get a word in. Ilaria was assigning the cooks what dishes to prepare. Having lined up the Carter children in a row, she gave orders. Alex was to contact the families and officially invite. Victoria was to prepare several compositions on the piano. Blake was to go to the florist and pick up a bouquet. And Nellie, well, she should just stay at home. Adam again sat abandoned. No one cared about him. He pitifully stretched out his legs. Ilaria, distracted, said that she should not worry. As soon as she finished, she would immediately take her to the doctor. Again, this flower. It seemed to mock Adam by saying, "And all the attention of your wife was focused on me." He was ready to fry this orchid in batter. Blake took flowers from the florist on behalf of Ilaria, admiring how beautiful they were. Suddenly, he heard a well-known authoritative voice that addressed him as to why he had not come to her for so long. His eyes filled with horror. It's Mom. He asked why she was here. The woman looked at him arrogantly with a cold squint and said that she had heard rumors that the Carter family was throwing a flower party for Mr. Gucci. She came up and grabbed his face, reminding him of his birthday on that day, and that she wanted to stay with him for a few days. The boy devastatedly replied that she was confused. His birthday was on a different day. She shrugged. Well, she was wrong. It happens. But he doesn't want to take his mom to a party where there will be a lot of investors. When Blay realized that Ilaria sincerely cared about him, his mother's lies became unbearable. The boy replied that his mother was really mistaken, smiling, remembering the warm and affectionate smile of his daughter-in-law. The mother's face twisted with anger when she heard from her son that he understood everything, that they just wanted to use him to get to the party, but he would not allow this. In a rage, the woman tore the flower from the bouquet and furiously threw it away, shouting, "Since when did he become so bold?" Picking up a flower, Blake answered, what would she do to him? A ban in a dark room like in childhood, that later he could not make a sound from hoarseness. Having added that she was not going to invite her to the flower party, she yelled after all this that after all this she might as well not call her mother. When he entered the courtyard, Ilaria joyfully approached him, but saw that Blake was drooping. He gently asked what happened. The boy said that it was just an accident. He would go and buy a new bouquet. Seeing how he was leaving, her heart became alarming. Something had definitely happened. Alex came up and said that Blake probably met his crazy mother. The guy explained that real pain in the ass, even though Blake doesn't give a damn, he wanted to get at least a little love from his mother. But she's only interested in money and men. She's not capable of truly loving. She decided to deal with this lady as soon as she finished with her main work. But out of the corner of her eye, she saw someone sneaking into the greenhouse. Following this man, she threw a watering can at the stranger with all her might. The watering can hit Blake's mother, whom Alex recognized and threateningly asked what she forgot here. So this is what Ilaria thought as Blake's own mother looked at the woman. She stood up, rubbing her shoulder and complaining that she had been hit so hard, she just looked at the flowers. Patrick paid her money to destroy a rare orchid. Blake entered the greenhouse and asked his mother what she was doing here. She stated with a calm expression that she had come to see her son, who had so suddenly run away. She was his mother. Blake's mother, searching her eyes, looked for that same orchid, what it should look like. Then Ilaria asked the question why she came to the greenhouse. She tried to inspect the flowers, peeking out from behind Ilaria, but Blake deliberately blocked her view. The boy said menacingly that he would give her money, only let her leave and not disturb her daughter-in-law. She broke the pots that stood nearby, yelling that these are just a few stinking flowers, and she is his mother. How dare he talk to her like that? Then he pushed her with all his might, and the woman flew to the floor. Contorted with anger, she screamed that she had only broken a couple of pots, and he pushed his own mother. Then she poured out all her anger on Ilaria, yelling at her that this trash from the slums was brainwashing her son, married a cripple who could not satisfy her, and now she has moved on to her young son. Ilaria opened her mouth. Her breathing quickened from such rudeness. But before he had time to answer anything to his mother, Blake grabbed her by the neck, screaming for her to shut up, and began to strangle her. Ilaria began to pull away the boy who hated this woman with all his heart. Pulling him away, she tried to calm him down, but Blake burst into tears, saying why his mother is such a terrible person. The girl gently hugged him to her, and the boy sobbed and said that his daughter-in-law really loved him like a son. Having calmed down a little, he said why his mother was not like that. At this time, his mother, completely distraught from such impudence, screamed that he was just a puppy who was begging her for love, but only a little brat. She staggered towards her son in a rage, ready to kill right there. But she was knocked out again to the floor by Ilaria. Putting her foot on her, she asked if she wanted to be beaten again. Such selfish and ill-mannered women do not deserve to be mothers. She, in turn, choking with anger, pinched that Ilaria married a cripple for money. But there is no need to tell that it was out of great love or that she has a fetish for cripples. Ilaria kicked her on the head. How dare she talk about her husband like that? At that moment, Adam entered the greenhouse on his feet, declaring who this mad dog was that dared to attack his wife. Crossing her eyes and not believing what was happening, she screamed how he could stand. Ilaria ran up to him and asked how and when. Adam smiled and explained that she had been so busy lately that he could not tell her. "And this, madam, looking at Blake's mother, we will send to Africa." She began to brag about Blake, saying that they couldn't do this to her. She was just lost. Looking ingratiatingly at her son, she asked to let her go. She was his mother. Blake contemptuously clasped her hands, saying that before that she considered him her son. She really hopes that now she will have a place in his family. Blake pushed her and added, "Let her now pay for her mistakes. She is no longer his mother." Before she had time to answer him, her gaze fell on a beautiful lilac flower. Crawling to the pot, she tore out the flower, squeezing it in her hands, hissing that let her suffer. But this is what they will do without their orchid. When Adam was undergoing rehabilitation, he first stood on a walker, wondering whether he should immediately stand on his feet in front of his wife, whether this would be a shock for her. She's so strong, and she'll easily lift him into her arms like a princess. Adam and Ilaria looked at the crazy woman who, in hysterical laughter, said that the end of their rare orchidea. Ilaria approached her with a smile and noticed that the woman clearly did not shine with intelligence. Blake said that this is not the same orchid. The real one is further away. Alex pointed his finger at her. But how could this nondescript flower be such a rare orchid? Blake told his mother that she was so stupid that she could not distinguish a real orchid. He regretted that he had once begged her for love, and that she was even his biological mother.